So 2021 represents a pivotal year to invigorate interest, awareness and investment in large-scale food fortification and biofortification. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres will convene a food systems summit as part of the Decade of Action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. The summit will launch bold new actions to deliver progress on all 17 SDGs, each of which relies to some degree on healthier, more sustainable and equitable food systems. Now, the second Global Summit on Food Fortification virtual series is ongoing throughout the year, attracting hundreds of people each month to focus on the key ingredients for addressing the unfinished agenda of food fortification. And today we're taking a deep dive focusing on the complementarity between large-scale food fortification and biofortification and the opportunities of ensuring the most vulnerable people are reached with nutrient-rich foods. We have with us today Arun Baral, CEO of Harvest Plus, Dr. Lawrence Haddad, Executive Director of GAIN, and Dr. Saskia Ozendap, Executive Director of the Micronutrient Forum. What exactly is your focus?
Harvest Plus is really focused on getting biofortified crops. These are nutritionally enhanced crops in the hands of the most vulnerable people, and in doing so, improving their health and also improving their livelihoods.
But the Micronutrient Forum is an international NGO that is acting as a knowledge broker on all aspects of micronutrient malnutrition and interventions that can solve micronutrient malnutrition.
GAIN is an organization that is operating in 13 countries around the world, and we are trying to make food systems work harder for healthy food and healthy diets. And what keeps me up at night is that 3 billion people worldwide can't afford healthy diets.
Yeah, I think it's a fair thing to keep you up at night. COVID-19 has cast a very long shadow over every aspect of life on this planet over the last 15 months. What would you say the impact of COVID-19 has been on global malnutrition?
Well, some work that Saskia and I have been involved in, called the Standing Together for Nutrition Consortium, has modeled basically the impacts of COVID on malnutrition. And it's essentially turning the clock back 10 years. So 10 years of progress is being wiped out if we don't act. And we need to act in 3 different ways. We need to make sure food systems are protected so that nutritious food can get to people who need it at the right price. We need to protect nutrition programs within health systems. And we need to make sure that social safety nets keep working to get income and money to people so they can afford the right food.
Yeah, so the key impacts have been really devastating, and as Lawrence already indicated, we see a reverse of progress to an extent that I think none of us have seen before in our careers. And due to the fact that there is this enormous economic crisis affecting everyone in the world, including donors, country governments, but also incomes to decline. And so 2021, we still see the pandemic accelerating in countries such as India, and which is a country with lots of malnutrition already pre-pandemic. We are really pessimistic now that we may see these figures going to further increase. So we need to really act now.
Absolutely. So before the pandemic, 2 billion people were suffering from malnutrition, not a small number. Now World Food Program, for example, estimates that people who are facing food security is going to double, 2020. So that's like 265 million people. So what does that mean, 265 million? You put the populations of UK, Germany, and France put together, and then some more. So that's the challenge. And this is going to play out for a long time before it fixes itself. So that's the biggest concern we have, that it's going to be around for a long time. We need sustainable solutions, and where is the support?
Well, yeah, I mean, governments around the world would probably say they're under a lot of pressure and they're having to rethink their budgets. But of course, this problem of micronutrient deficiency is with us for a long time to come. I'm going to ask you, Saskia, can you explain what exactly micronutrient malnutrition is, and why is it as pressing a problem now as it ever was?
Yeah, so micronutrients are vitamins and minerals, and these are nutrients that the body needs in tiny amounts, but they're yet incredibly important for optimal growth, development, as well as immunity against infectious diseases and the response to vaccinations. And I think that's already a sign of why it's important now. But when we look at the effects of micronutrients on brain development and on cognitive development, deficiencies in early life can really have lifelong lasting implications, because it affects the cognitive development and the school performance of children, and later on, when they are adults, their earning capacity, and eventually also the economic productivity at country level. So we really have to act now. And as we said, as we've heard from Arun, the situation is dire now because fewer people can afford nutritious foods, and these are foods that are rich in micronutrients, such as animal source foods and fruits and vegetables. And we see evidence for that when incomes decline and when these food prices increases, households are going to shift to consuming more of these staple foods at the expense of these nutritious foods.
Lots of people have heard of fortification, but they probably haven't heard of industrial fortification or biofortification. So can you break those terms down, explain what the difference is between them and how they complement each other?
Yes, so the industrial fortification is the addition of essential micronutrients to foods during processing. We have examples such as wheat flour fortification or maize fortification or iodized salt, our biggest public health achievements to date, or fortification of edible oils. And then biofortification is the increase of micronutrients or essential nutrients in plants through natural breeding. And both of them are therefore different, but they also are complementary because, as I said before, there's not one silver bullet that can address micronutrient malnutrition.
What exactly is the problem? What are the stumbling blocks between the position we're in now and the position we want to be in, so that as many people in the world, whatever foods they eat, whatever is common to their territory, can have good quality nutritious food that's been industrially fortified at scale?
There are issues on all three components: the demand side, the enabling environment side, and the supply side. On the enabling environment side, by that I mean the policy side, you really need mandatory legislation to create a level playing field for all companies to do the same thing. Because if it's voluntary, some companies can do it and some can't. But even when there's a level playing field, you need to be able to make it easy for businesses to fortify. So sometimes companies will have to import fortificants, the stuff that you add to the staple foods, and often there'll be a tariff on that. And we spend a lot of time convincing governments to take tariffs off the import of these micronutrient mixes that you add to staples. So that's one side of things. The other side of things is we have to create the demand from consumers. We have to make consumers feel comfortable consuming fortified foods. There are taboos, there are concerns, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So we have to spend quite a bit of time convincing civil society and consumers that it's safe. So it's not quite exactly as simple as add, mix, and stir. It's more complicated than that. It requires demand-side interventions with consumers, policy and legislation, and then it requires working with businesses to make it easy for them to fortify.
How commonly available are biofortified crops in low and middle income countries?
Biofortification and the delivery of these crops started about 10 years ago. And fast forward 2020, we have reached about 50 million people, and the reach is growing. We have 400 varieties of 12 staple crops that are now available in 41 countries. And there are many more in testing. So, with time and investments, we see the reach of biofortified crops, specifically the staple crops, increasing significantly, and the benefits for the smallholder farmers and the most vulnerable people will continue to grow.
And let me ask you this little supplementary. How accepted is the technology? Because when something is new, when there's an innovation, even if there's science to back it up, there can be hesitancy, can't there?
Excellent question, Henry. So the acceptance is high. And what I can tell you, the 50 million number in 10 years is a testament to that. These crops are developed through conventional breeding, so there is no controversy of GMO. This is just the way Mother Nature would, would sort of develop a crop, just that we're a little bit more systematic about choosing highly nutritious varieties and promoting them. So no controversy around technology.
Yeah, I mean, and Lawrence, it sounds like both interventions have tremendous potential to expand their impact, but what needs to happen globally and at country level in order to realize this potential?
Well, in order to realize the potential of these kinds of investments, there has to be an awakening in governments as to the importance of micronutrient deficiencies. You know, micronutrient deficiencies are called hidden hunger for a reason, because their effects are hidden, and the fact that people are suffering from micronutrient malnutrition is also hidden. And so when you have the effects hidden and the fact that someone is micronutrient deficient also hidden, it's hidden from the headlines, it's hidden from the resource allocations. So we need really good data. We have very poor data on micronutrient malnutrition. We've been using the same 2 billion number for 20 years, and no one really believes it. And we need to get much more fine-grained data so that we know exactly which parts of which countries and which populations are deficient in which micronutrients. Then we can really start doing some serious advocacy, some serious targeting of interventions, and we can begin to understand where we're having successes and where we're not. And where we have successes, then that breeds more confidence and more hunger to develop more interventions and invest more. So it's a lot of it is around data and making the invisible visible.
Thank you, Lawrence. Arun, to you with the next question. I mean, what are the most important steps we need to take in order to reach a far greater number of people with biofortified crops?
So we need to increase the access to affordable, nutritious foods. So staple crops like wheat, rice, millet, legumes that form a big part of the dinner plate, we need to make them as nutritious as possible. So our strategy is focusing on making sure that we support a strong product pipeline. We are working with our CGIAR partners and private sector to ensure that they start breeding nutritional traits into the products. It's like a fluoride in the water concept. Once you have fluoride in the water, then the benefits of that fluoride is available to everybody. So we need to raise awareness of biofortified crops and their benefits to the governments. So the agriculture ministry, the health ministry, all need to be educated and explained about the benefits.
Okay, I want to hear from all of you how biofortification and industrial fortification feed into the global campaign, the global effort to fight malnutrition. Talk to me about that.
These two approaches are both highly scalable. They're both delivering micronutrients to people through foods that they can actually afford. One of the things COVID-19 does is it disrupts food system. It takes a wrecking ball to food systems. And that means that the prices of perishable foods like fruits, eggs, dairy, fish, vegetables, these kinds of foods will fluctuate wildly in price, and often they'll be very, very high. So micronutrients delivered through staple foods, which tend to have prices that are lower and more stable, this is like the safety net for micronutrients for low-income people. This is a true no-regrets set of interventions for governments. When you're in troubled times, when you need reliable delivery mechanisms for micronutrients, large-scale fortification and biofortification is the way you reach the poorest and the most vulnerable in these difficult time we're living through.
And Arun, how do you see this over there at Harvest Plus? The importance of these two approaches and the degree to which they're understood and maybe perhaps adoptable globally?
We believe, and we strongly believe, that both the approaches are very complementary to each other. What do I mean by that? Both the approaches can target a wider set of population. For example, in India, fortification is very prevalent and it's targeting the urban populations very, very well. However, on the rural side, people who eat what they grow, smallholder farmers, the rural poor, biofortification is a more appropriate intervention because these are micronutrients bred into the crops, and these are the crops that people are growing every day and eating. We need to explain these benefits to the government loud and clear, and if we can do that, I think the most vulnerable people, 2 billion or however many they're going to hugely benefit.
Yeah, so both interventions are important and they are complementary because there is no one silver bullet that can address micronutrient malnutrition. It really depends on the context and on the needs of the population. And what we see now with COVID is that the interventions such as fortification and biofortification become more important when nutritious diets become more out of reach of people. They cannot afford anymore these highly nutritious foods that are rich in micronutrients. And I think for policymakers to take informed decisions, it would ideally be good if they have access to data so that they can base and develop a package of interventions that consist of these interventions, fortification and biofortification, but also other micronutrient solutions tailored to the need of the populations or of groups of the populations. But unfortunately, as Lawrence already indicated, we do have a huge data gap in micronutrients that also needs to be addressed quickly so that we can even make these interventions more cost effective than that they already are by better targeting them to populations most in need.
So Lawrence, where do large-scale food fortification and biofortification fit into the agenda of the Food Systems Summit and Nutrition for Growth? And actually, while you're at it, just tell us what outcomes you would like to see out of the summits as far as scaling up is concerned.
We need to see bold commitments, bold aspirational commitments that are then progressively realized over the following 3-4 years. So Arun has mentioned 50 million people are consuming biofortified crops. We need to get that up to 500 million by 2025 and up to 1 billion or 1.5 billion by 2030. I mean, that's the ambition. So we want governments to get behind this, to demand that it gets put in the development finance institutions, lending portfolios. We want the scientists to develop newer, better crops that are more profitable, more bioavailable. We want more money to go into this. We want more businesses to invest in biofortified crops. And what's really interesting about these two interventions is that they are essentially proven interventions. We don't have to do a lot of piloting of them. We don't have to wait for a whole range of other things to happen. We can scale these things fairly quickly. We can make a massive dent in that 2 billion micronutrient malnourished number by 2030.
So there's a lot of momentum being generated by and building up toward these summits. So Saskia, what would you like to see come out of them?
So for us, it's critical that these solutions, such as fortification and biofortification, but also other solutions that can help to eliminate micronutrient malnutrition, are being highlighted at both the Food Systems Summit and the Nutrition for Growth Summit that will be following this year. And we are not making sufficient progress at the moment towards this goal. So we need to step up our commitments on these two interventions, fortification and biofortification, and other interventions that are needed to eliminate micronutrient malnutrition. We have the interventions available and they can be scaled. They're very cost effective. And we need more data on micronutrients to enable better targeting of these interventions and tracking of progress.
This is the largest opportunity because all these interventions are right there. What we need is strong and long-term commitments to make this happen.